Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the February 27th Growth Committee meeting. I want to welcome online here we have Councillor Killen and Councillor Harris. Thank you. And I'll acknowledge that Councillor Lowe is away on vacation. And so with that, we'll begin. First order of business, Common Clerk, would be the minutes of January the 16th. Could I get a motion then? So moved by Donna. Seconder? Ben or Joanna? Okay, Joanne. On the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Approved. Thank you very much. Disclosure of conflict of interest? Don't see any. Approval of the agenda?
Move approval of agenda.
Okay, can I get a seconder? Joanna? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Consent agenda, request to present, age-friendly community.
Move 5.1.
Okay, and a seconder?
Joanna.
Joanna?
Seconded.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All in favor of that?
All in favor of that?
Aye,
Aye.
thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move right into
We'll move right into
7.1 then.
7.1 then.
Community service.
Community service
on
on
request.
request.
Director Dalton?
Director Dalton.
So Deputy,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
a brief
A brief
introduction.
Okay. Are you two muted, Joanna and Brent? We're getting feedback.
I'm not.
Okay,
I'm muted. I was, but now I'm not.
okay. So we're getting some feedback, so just, okay, thank you.
Okay, Acting Chair and members of Growth Committee. Staff has been engaging with Indigenous leaders and community stakeholders to coordinate a 2-day powwow in the city of St. John that is anticipated to attract upwards of 10,000 visitors to the region in October of this year. David Dobbelstein, the Acting Director of Growth and Community Planning, will be providing a summary of the event along with a brief overview of community, cultural, and economic impacts. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Dawson, go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner, and good morning, Deputy Mayor and members of the Growth Committee. As I get started, I'm mindful of words and a reality that we hear in these chambers often, that we're situated on traditional territory of the Wolastoqey. And the Wolastoqey, along with their Indigenous neighbors, the Mi'kmaq and the Passamaquoddy, signed peace and friendship treaties with the British Crown in the 1700s that protected their rights to lands and resources. So I'm here today to speak with you about a powwow that is planning to be held in St. John this fall, probably in October. And there's a strong desire by our First Nations communities to hold this powwow in St. John. St. John would be a place with deep meaning for these communities. Menequest, the traditional name of St. John, means where the sea takes the land, and this place has long been known as a traditional gathering space for Indigenous communities. It's partly why we've named the new area on Market Slip Itoli Makahamik, which is that's what that means. So there's a tremendous amount of significance in this opportunity. There is, as you'll see in the report, something called a powwow trail, and these are powwows that are held throughout New England and Atlantic Canada. And in particular in the report, we highlight the powwows that we know are tentatively scheduled for this year in October. What's significant about the opportunity for St. John is, one, there's never been a powwow in St. John. So even though this is traditional gathering space of Indigenous communities, it has been a very, very long time since there has been a gathering of that nature. The second piece, powwows, while traditionally a place where the First Nations communities gather together to celebrate culture and tradition and celebrate and dance and sing and share traditions with themselves, it's also a chance for them to share that experience with non-Indigenous peoples as well. And we know from experience and in dealing in conversation with our First Nations partners that many times non-Indigenous Canadians choose not to go to powwows that are held on reserve lands. So what's unique about St. John is this will be a very large powwow, but also the largest one in the province that would not be held on a reserve. So there's excitement about the possibility that there could be tens of thousands of people coming to celebrate this powwow together. The wonderful thing about the powwow is that it's free for anyone to attend. So it really is this chance to celebrate culture, to really move our journey further towards truth and reconciliation as a community and as a province. So the powwow would be hosted by our First Nations communities. So it's not the city is not the host. So it is going to happen in St. John, or we believe it's going to happen in St. John. The city would be presenting it. And we would be members on a powwow committee that, again, would be chaired by our First Nations communities. We would play a very active role in seeing this happen, but it is our First Nations communities that are leading this effort, and we're sort of playing a supporting role. And so we think there's a tremendous amount of both cultural and social opportunity here, and even economic opportunity. We talk in the report briefly with potential of 5,000 to 10,000 visitors descending on the city. That's $1 to $2 million of spending. So it's not only going to benefit us from a cultural perspective, it'll also benefit local businesses and hotels who will be patronized by these folks spending money. So we are planning on engaging with a First Nations event coordination company called Double Curve, who do this all over the country. They're experts in doing this. They've shared with us that the total cost to run the powwow in St. John will be on the order of around $250,000. And so the ask of Growth Committee to recommend to Council today is that the city come to the table with $50,000. That's what we're calling seed funding to help with that effort. We've already met with Envision St. John. They're fully engaged on our board with this as well. They're going to put $30,000 down, as well as in-kind support to make sure this is marketed. And the team then will use that those leverage funds to really garner additional funds from other levels of government, as well as other funding partners, whether it's businesses or the community who would have an interest in seeing this happen. So this is a tremendously exciting opportunity for the city. It really advances certainly Council's priority of advancing truth and reconciliation, and staff's recommendation is that you recommend to Common Council that we allocate $50,000 or up to $50,000 from the Community Services Reserve to support the coordination of this powwow this fall. And with that, we're happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you. It's interesting because I know Councillor Killen and Councillor Harris. Were we in Regina for the FCM, Joanna? I think that's, and there was a powwow out there.
There was a powwow out there that you guys had done.
Somebody's not.
Yeah, it was amazing. Really, really exciting opportunity there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was unbelievable experience.
There was
Thousands
thousand
of people in
people in this arena,
and
there was,
I'm going to say
over 100 different First Nations there
performing,
and it was absolutely
awesome.
awesome.
So with that,
I wish.
I was just going to move the recommendation.
okay.
Can I get a second?
Seconded.
John
On the question,
all in favor?
all in favor?
And opposed?
And opposed?
Unanimous.
Unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Obviously,
Be a
it'll
very
be a
exciting
very
event.
exciting event.
So
So,
next we'll move on
next
to
we'll move on to 7.2, estimates the
rental market.
rental market study.
Andy Reid
is here,
our housing manager. And Andy will be providing an overview of the results.
Are you guys on mute?
There we go. All right.
Okay,
I'll
I
just
think
get
that's
started.
better.
Yeah, thanks. Andy Reid is here, our housing manager, and he will be providing an overview of the results highlighted in CMHC's 2023 rental market study, including vacancy rates, development types, rental rates, and new rental stock completed across New Brunswick's 3 major urban centers. And I'll hand it over to Mr. Reid.
Thank you, Commissioner Poffenroth, Deputy Mayor, and members of the committee. I'm pleased to be here today to present one piece of information that came out last month. It's part of information we're hoping to release to you regularly as part of the monitoring framework of our Affordable Housing Action Plan. So last month, you may be aware, CMHC released their latest rental market report. This would cover the period of October 2022 to October 2023. And just to highlight what it is, just make sure I've got the slide in presentation mode here. So the survey includes only private initiated structures with at least 3 rental units, which have been on the market for at least 3 months. And in St. John, I suppose we're fortunate because of our population size. We are covered by that survey, having a population over 10,000, so it provides a lot of useful information. So that's one piece of the rental market picture. Our needs assessment did estimate there were between 3,000 to 5,000 additional units in our secondary market as well. These would be more non-traditional forms, single-family homes, semi-detached homes that are rented out. The highlights of the rental market survey, average rents did increase by 9.8% from 2022 to 2023. So that's a rate higher than the national average, and it's something that is remarkable, probably not unanticipated with the removal of the caps in late 2022. In terms of the vacancy rate, the vacancy rate in the city in the primary rental market is moving towards what's considered a healthier rate of 3%. Last year we were at 1.7 and it's now moved to 2.4%. And that's against some of the trends seen in the other 3 cities. There does appear to be a sustained demand in the newer units. Affordability in the rental market continues to be a challenge requiring action to address identified housing gaps in the city's housing needs assessment for supportive housing, housing for the most vulnerable households, and affordable rental housing and ownership. To continue to grow the population and reach what is considered a healthy vacancy rate, additional market housing is also going to be needed. So over half of the primary rental market in St. John is made up of 2-bedroom units. The overall number in the primary rental market sits at 9,425. In the past year, we did see the highest growth in the three-bedroom plus unit range with an additional 85 units. By zone, the rent increases notably were highest in the west and east sides of the city, where traditionally we kind of think the south area, the Central Peninsula, has seen higher increases, but in the past year, it's been the east and the west where rents have increased between 10 to 15% if you're looking at the figures from October 2022 to 23. So to give you some context, over the past 5 years, it's notable we hit that 2020 period, and these are the estimated percent of change for average rents. So as mentioned before, last year we saw an increase of 9.8%, which notably exceeded the pace of inflation, estimated at 2.7%, the CPI, and that's also higher than our 2 other major cities in New Brunswick. Economic factors such as a continued decline in unemployment and gains in wages are positive. Still, wages aren't keeping pace with the increased rent and are continuing to pose a challenge for those in the primary rental market. So in terms of average rents by bedroom types, this chart shows over the past 10 years the different bedroom types, and the rent for a 2-bedroom unit in 2023 was $1,090, so that's a 20% increase in the past 3 years. The average rents for all units in New Brunswick, it's important to note that while the primary rental market is continuing to become more unaffordable, it's not only in St. John, this is a problem throughout New Brunswick. So the red line is St. John, with Moncton being blue and Fredericton in green. The city of St. John has historically had lower average rents than Moncton and Fredericton, and this trend continues. I mean, you could account that largely for our older housing stock. There's, I believe it's 30% of our stock. Only 30% of our stock was built after 1980. So in 2023, the average rent total was just over $1,000 in St. John, and 1,100 and some in Moncton, and 1,259 in Fredericton. This slide I'd just like to linger on. So this shows the profile of the new rental stock completed between July 2022 and June 2023. So these are the new units that have been recently brought online. And if you're looking at St. John and our the additions to the universe, that would be the column furthest to your right here. You can see the average rents for the newer units in St. John City are quite high, and our vacancy rate is quite low for those additional units. So that speaks to the ability for tenants to pay those high rents, and notably, those rents are higher than or on par with Fredericton and Moncton. And at the same time, a 0% vacancy rate. So it really does speak to the demand for new supply, and that demand is not going fulfilled in St. John. In terms of our historical vacancy rate, you know, the rental market is cyclical, so it's important to, you know, not necessarily catastrophize things. Look at things over the longer term, and this gives you our historical vacancy rate over the past 20 years. So next year, when we come back, report on this report again, it will be interesting to see where we are. Are we closer to the 3%? How are our average rents doing? This is something that you know, I'd say a lot more resources have now been committed to monitoring, to responding to in the city of St. John. It's another important feature to note, just, you know, what levers we have at our disposal here in the city to pull on and to help out this situation when it comes to overall housing supply and demand, increasing supply. Last year, the city issued a record number of building permits, so certainly pulling on the levers we have at our disposal here with the 479 new units created in 2023. And this year, as of yesterday, we've permitted 88 new units, so we're off to a very good start in 2024. As well, the committee will be familiar with several of the large initiatives being planned over the next 3 years, including the Housing Accelerator Fund, the ongoing implementation of our Affordable Housing Action Plan. The bottom line is it will take time, but we're committing to a number of substantial initiatives to monitor, to continue to pull at those municipal levers we have at our disposal. The increase in permits issued and continued housing starts outpacing completions do indicate that additional supply is forthcoming over the next few years. So in continuing to implement the actions of our Affordable Housing Action Plan and the implementation of the federal government funding through the Housing Accelerator Fund plan, we hope to continue to address the gaps in the housing spectrum, in addition to increasing overall supply. Regular monitoring of housing trends, such as the primary rental market, will help gain a fuller picture of current challenges in the housing system and inform the city's long-term solutions. So thank you for the opportunity to present, and happy to take any questions you may have.
Thanks, Andy. So do we have any questions or comments? I can't see.
Yeah, I've got some, Deputy.
Okay, Councillor Harris, go ahead.
Thanks for the presentation, Andy, through you, Deputy Mayor, to Andy. Just a quick thing, something you mentioned that really hit me a little funny. You said that the demonstrates the ability.
Regarding your question on REITs, the rental market survey doesn't actually track ownership, so it's aggregated data. So that wasn't part of the data presented today, but certainly.
Okay.
Yep.
I was just going to say, because to me, that number is paramount to us being able to do anything or understand how we can protect tenants. You know, it's going to take a decade by anybody I talk to who works in industry to right size our construction industry. It's going to take at least 10 years. We're never going to be able to produce the supply we need to keep up with demand. As a matter of fact, the last 3 years, we've missed our demand targets across the board. At least even just for our own population growth targets, never mind what the anticipated projections are for St. John. I know that there was, I'm trying to remember the economist, it wasn't Richard Salion, I think it might have been, it wasn't Don Mills. Anyway, it was a gentleman, one of the economists in New Brunswick did an analysis on St. John's kind of high, low, and medium projection targets, and we're not even really keeping up with the low targets in some of those cases. So I guess what I'd like to know is this information, I guess two things. Is there a way for us to determine who owns the new units that are being created? Because knowing that will help us understand how fragile and vulnerable we are to profiteering, which is something we don't have any analysis on right now. It makes it very difficult to make decisions. We just saw the city of Brampton implement a landlord registry. Montreal's not far behind. Holding property owners accountable at a time in a housing crisis is something that everybody should be doing that we don't seem to have any capacity for. So is there any new tools that staff is considering making recommendations to council on to better support those needs? Not just the needs of supply creation, which is 10 years behind, and doesn't matter how many levers we pull, we don't have a right-sized construction industry, so we're never going to have a right-sized supply creation for at least that decade. So then it puts us back into the category of how do we protect what we have? How do we protect the units that are currently affordable? I know that there's been other data sets that show that the level of hemorrhaging that we're doing at the affordable rate. Certainly Julia Woodhall at UNB points this out. There was another gentleman who did an interview with CBC recently on this around affordable units being hemorrhaged in the province of New Brunswick. You know, those are the areas that we need to start. That's the sandbox we need to start playing in from where I sit. I just don't know what staff is considering currently looking at to propose to council to create tools or to create measures to better protect tenants.
Through the deputy mayor to the councillor, all very good questions to pose. As you know, working within the housing system, that's a rapidly changing system, new information coming out every day. So really the point of today's presentation is to make an effort to share and contextualize the latest pieces of data we receive, and we are heavily reliant on CMHC for that housing information, as well as other sources like StatsCan. We've got a relatively new and updated housing needs assessment, all good sources of information. But as far as other activities we're undertaking, when it comes to landlord and landlord relations, you know, our coordination, our discussions with NB Housing are you know, always underway and active, but they would be sort of the level of government responsible for landlord relations. There could be other departmental initiatives coming forward in the future, but for the scope of today's presentation, that's.
Okay, I'm going to let Commissioner Pothenroth pipe in here.
There we go. Further to some of those points that Andy made, I mean, our focus right now is to incentivize the increased supply of units. And one of our initiatives under the Housing Action Plan is to incentivize affordable housing. And as Andy mentioned, we're working with our partners at the provincial level and other groups to be part of those discussions as to how we can support and impact the affordability issues with respect to our housing, the housing issue right now. But the supply is really where we're focusing our energy right now and working with our partners. Don't know, CAO, if you wanted to.
Is there anything from any indication that the province is looking at any of these transformative solutions? I mean, even just reining in short-term rentals, which is something that apparently we've been calling for, and I hope we have. I know that it's considered by some experts to be minuscule in its impact, but the signal, I think, that it sends to the market is more important than the short-term benefit of regulating that. So I guess if you're saying this is a provincial lane that we're not currently exploring how to play in more deeply, I guess, then what is the indication from NB Housing on any of these fronts around landlord regulation, around tenant regulation or tenant support, around short-term rental supply curbing and things like that?
We'll let the city manager answer there, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a few points. So in terms of rent controls and those sorts of things, it is really within the provincial mandate. It's not something that we're involved with at the municipal level. In terms of short-term rentals, the Minister Green was out and stated publicly that she was setting up a task force to focus on short-term rentals and review it. Overall, in terms of New Brunswick, it's not a big percentage of the overall housing supply. I don't recall the numbers right off. I don't have them at my fingertips, but the province has shared that information. And it is a pretty small segment overall, but it is something that they've taken away and they are looking at. And in terms of NB Housing, the focus is really on the $100 million that was announced 1 to 2 years ago, in getting the new builds going and new housing established in St. John that will have those long-term agreements in place to ensure that there's affordable supported housing.
Thank you. I'll let Mayor go ahead.
I'll just add to that really quickly that 8 cities met with Minister Jill Green along with Minister Glenn Savoy, and we talked about all of this. And that was probably late January, maybe early February. And short-term rentals were, and as the CAO just said, it's not a huge market apparently in New Brunswick. I can't remember the numbers either, but that's the only ones they're looking at are the ones that are actually registered. So, but they have committed to looking at that issue as well. So there was a couple of other issues as well with how can we protect renters, et cetera. There's a lot of protection out there and has been for years for home buyers. So we're trying to get that shift now to renters as well.
Thank you, Your Worship. Any other comments or questions? Or
Deputy Mayor, if I may just add
Sure.
to pile on, just thinking of the plans adopted by council, the initiatives, and just remind that last slide of the presentation regarding, council has adopted the 5-year strategy for affordable housing action, and that includes 39 actions. So that's a substantial document, and we continue to implement that. That takes up considerable amount of resources to action implement. On top of that, we do have the Housing Accelerator Fund Action Plan, which has 8 initiatives. So there are quite a number of ways the municipality is responding to the current housing situation. And, as new opportunities emerge, we'll continue to look at them. But I just did wish to emphasize again the council's adoption of those documents.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks very much, Mr. Reid. Can I get a motion to, do you want to say something?
Just in addition, I know Andy touched on this during the presentation, but just to reflect on it again, that slide that shows that for the new builds, I think it's important for us to reflect that, for any new build in St. John, the market is telling us that there's 0% vacancy. So As a new unit comes online, there's significant demand in St. John for new units, and it's being absorbed into the market. St. John and Fredericton, there are vacancy rates, 0.6% in Fredericton and 1% in Moncton for brand new builds, but in St. John it's at 0, and the rents are the same. So, you know, for developers who are considering, it shows that the market is ripe in St. John for development.
And here's what we're actually seeing year over year versus here's what we were hoping for. So strategically, how do we analyze the effectiveness of the Housing Accelerator Fund as well as the Affordable Housing Plan unless we have projections that we can compare against? And I would suggest that who owns what types of entities own what buildings in this city is an important data set that can help us analyze long-term fragility in our housing system. But that, I'll leave it at that. I don't know exactly how to assess these initiatives going forward and how to propose pivots when needed when we're not seeing the results around supply creation or ownership stock, you know, without that. So anyway.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Okay, a motion to receive and file. So move, seconder.
Thank you.
Joanna, on favor? Thank you very much, Mr. Reid.
Thank you.
Excellent presentation. Let's move on. I guess we have no referrals, so I'll ask for a motion for adjournment. Thank you, Worship. Second. All in favor? Okay, thank you, everybody.